Member for Saanich North and Islands.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday we celebrated the tabling of the Declaration Act Action Plan. We've repeatedly committed to repairing the legacies of colonialism, to upholding Indigenous rights, including their rights to their territories, rights to fish, hunt, gather medicines, foods, unencumbered. This week, Angelina Hopkins Rose from Chatham Nation was in the news. Hopkins Rose is calling on the government to pause a proposed land management plan to spray glyphosate and other poisons in the unceded territories of the Stolo, the Chatham, the Nklakatmuk, Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. Hopkins Rose's activism has been successful, Mr. Speaker. This weekend, my constituency office, actually our constituency offices, received over 2,000 emails on the issue. The management plan in question takes effect tomorrow, and we'll have these carcinogenic chemicals sprayed broadly across their lands where Indigenous peoples regularly harvest berries and other traditional plants and medicines. Hopkins Rose is saying there was not nearly enough consultation with Indigenous peoples on this management plan. My question through you, Honourable Speakers, to the Minister of Forests, in keeping with our commitments under the Declaration Act, will the Minister pause the spraying of glyphosate set to begin tomorrow and order a consultation with Indigenous peoples that have been affected by this?
Minister of Forests and Lands.
I thank the member for the question. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I've done a lot of research on this because we've also been, there's questions about glyphosate use in forestry. And the effects of glyphosate on human health has been really extensively reviewed by international regulatory agencies, including Health Canada, with the conclusion being that exposure to glyphosate does not pose a carcinogenic or genotoxic risk to humans. And it remains an important tool for establishing conifer or conifer deciduous mixed stands and ensuring future timber supplies. But that said, the use of this herbicide in BC's forest sector has declined significantly in recent years as foresters use a variety of approaches to manage competing vegetation, including manual, mechanical, burning, biological, and herbicides. The glyphosate use in forestry, it has to comply with BC's Integrated Pest Management Act, and steps have to be taken to minimize impacts on environment, including in fish-bearing streams.
Member for Saanich North and Islands, supplemental.
So my question was about whether or not engagement with Indigenous nations, as we celebrated, quite intensely celebrated yesterday, allowing non-members onto the floor of this legislature to speak is a substantial thing. According to the plan, BC timber sales will be permitted to spray. Whether they're spraying less now than they have in the past makes little difference. The fact of the matter is that they're going to be allowed to spray glyphosate and other poisons for the next 5 years. These poisons will be used to kill salal, mushrooms, Indian hellebore, and berries, thimbleberry, raspberry, salmonberry, red elderberry, huckleberry, blueberry, ocean spray. These are all species that are unwanted, apparently. Unwanted by who? I don't think they're unwanted by the bears, but they're certainly not unwanted by Indigenous people who have been picking and harvesting these as staple food sources for thousands of years. Ocean spray, as an example of the connection that I want to make here, ocean spray, as my uncle Jacinton talks about, is the sign of Saanich summer. When the ocean spray starts to bloom and we can smell that beautiful scent throughout our territories, we know it's time to go out and engage our fishing in the summer in the Gulf Islands. And these are species that are unwanted, but yet Indigenous people have been using them, species such as ocean spray, to be able to understand how to live properly in our territories. These will just be wiped out with the spraying of glyphosate. My question is to the Minister of Forests. Does the Minister believe that the rights of Indigenous peoples to harvest traditional plants are outweighed by the Ministry's interests to maximize harvest volumes by the spraying of glyphosate?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. respect the member asking the question and his considerable knowledge on Indigenous peoples' culture. And I respect that, you know, there have been changes in this legislature, and we are working with Indigenous people. In fact, under the BC Integrated Pest Management Act and the BC Integrated Pest Management Regulations, the use of herbicide and products in forestry for vegetation and invasive plant control, it requires authorization by way of registering a pest management plan, which requires First Nations and public consultation, but First Nations consultation. And that is something that we take very seriously. Every year, a notice of intent has to be submitted to the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change with detailed treatment maps. And again, that consultation with First Nation is required. There's also been new technique on using superior orchard seed, improved nursery techniques, fast-growing seedlings and well-timed plantings so that we can improve plantation survival in areas of high vegetative competition, thus reducing the amount of herbicide used for plantation management. I visited the the center in Vernon recently and saw the work that was being done on this, the considerable work being done to try to improve the seeds that we are using right across the province to ensure that we can use less herbicide and when it comes to making sure that we are investing in our forests. But it's very critical that they also consult with Indigenous nations, which is part of what the Act is about.